Ho, ho, ho! Merry Christmas! Don't kill yourself, George. You're so sexy. Ho, ho, ho! I'm David Scandura.
I'm Justice Burkett.
And today we're here to find out, is It's a Wonderful Life the greatest movie ever made?
That does it. Out you two pixies go, through the door or out the window.
Did I fuck up the intro?
No, I think you're probably fine.
Okay.
I mean, I think it's gonna be different than it usually is. But I think we can roll with it. I think we can make it work.
Okay, cool. Welcome to the greatest movie ever made, the show where we watch a movie and tell you if it's the greatest movie ever made.
HEEHAW!
I knew it was going to be that. Man, imagine having a friend who just does that for the entire duration of his life.
Every single time you interact with him, from when he's 9 years old to when he's a grown-ass man with, like, a wife and a successful business and shit, every time you see this motherfucker, he's going, HEEHAW!
If I had a friend like that, I think I would shoot him with a gun.
Yeah, you wouldn't want to be friends with... What's that guy's name? Ben Wainwright? That's
Ben something or other. A movie that is so...
Sam Wainwright.
Sam, oh yeah.
Yeah, that's it.
A movie that is so thoroughly entertaining and compelling that while you're watching it, it's the only thing that matters in the world.
Yeah, Sam Wainwright almost married Mary instead of George Bailey, and that's a whole different life for that lady. I think that's why if he's never been born, she's like just unmarried and like working at the library, is because like the Sam Wainwright thing like ran its course, and after that she was like, I'm done, I can't.
I like that that's the thing that finally breaks George Bailey.
Yeah, he's like, oh no, my wife has a job,
is single and works at the library, and this is somehow worse than the town being taken over by the cartoonishly evil Mr. Potter.
Right, it's like, you know what's worse than like unfettered capitalism running rampant in Bedford Falls and like leaving people to like live in horrible slums, and the only businesses in town are like fucking strip clubs and shit. You know what's worse than that? What if a woman had a job instead of being a housewife? And George Bailey's like, I gotta stop this, Clarence.
I'm David Scandura, your host, joined as always by my co-host, and a man who I think in the vast configuration of things is nothing more than a scurvy little spider, Justice Burkett.
That's a great line. He dresses Potter down multiple times in this movie, and every time he gets like a big monologue where he's just talking about like, oh, these people deserve to own their own homes and put a roof over their heads, and you're just a fucking asshole.
Yeah.
I was like, man, we truly in 2024, the year 2024, where the consequences of late capitalism are even more apparent than when the film It's a Wonderful Life was originally made. I'm just like, man, we need a George Bailey. George Bailey is a hero for our time. Where he's like, I'm just trying to build people houses that they can afford to live in. Mr. Potter is similarly a villain for our time. Somebody should shoot him with a 3D printed gun.
I think I love all of George Bailey's creative insults. It does make me wish. Has anyone on Earth ever heard Jimmy Stewart say the word fuck? Like, I just want to watch a movie where Jimmy Stewart just does a tirade of, because he does this in a lot of movies. He's a wonderful actor.
Yeah.
Delivers all of these great lines and is dressing someone down, and then just goes, and you know what? Fuck you! I want to hear America's Dad, Jimmy Stewart, say fuck
just
you.
Just call a guy a motherfucker. Yeah, and another thing, Mr. Potter, I think you're one of the most low-down cocksuckers I've ever seen in my whole life.
Fuck you and the horse you rode in on, you son of a bitch.
Yeah. I wonder if he even swore in his regular day-to-day life, because from what I know about Jimmy Stewart as a man, I think he was devoutly religious, which wasn't too uncommon for Hollywood actors of the time, right?
Yeah, quite Christian and quite conservative.
Yeah, and so I wonder if maybe he just wasn't a big swearing guy even outside of the pictures. But
Yeah.
who knows? I don't know. Anyway, yeah. This is the did you finish introducing the show? I don't remember.
I
It
don't
also
remember
doesn't
either.
matter.
We're talking about It's a Wonderful Life.
Yes.
Before we get to that, which is of course our Christmas themed. It's the episodes. It's a last episode before Christmas.
Yes,
What do you fucking want?
This is like our quote unquote Christmas episode. We've covered holiday movies all throughout December, but this is the Christmassiest that we're getting, and we have a stone cold Christmas classic that we're talking about. This week. Yeah.
Big one on cable.
Oh yeah.
Because it hit the public domain in the 70s and just was aired on cable a shitload during Christmas.
Yep. That's one of the reasons the movie has the reputation that it has, because it was not that successful or well received at the time of its release, and it has like gained its reputation by, like, to your point, just playing endlessly on cable for the last like 50 years.
Yeah. So before we get to the movie, how are you doing?
I'm bad. I'm not doing well. I'm just having a rough few brain days. Have some travel for work coming up that I really don't want to do. Just stuff is feeling a little overwhelming lately, but it's fine. I will say, when I was watching this movie and George Bailey is like, there's like the little things start adding up, leading him to eventually contemplate jumping off a bridge.
You mean when he comes home and starts violently vocally berating his family?
Yes, yeah. When he comes home and yells at his family. Yes. I was sort of feeling that a little bit. I was not the yelling at my family part. Mostly, although occasionally I'll yell at my cat if he's annoying me. But no, like just the small inconveniences of life stacking up and stacking up and stacking up and making him feel like very overwhelmed and like he's just like, I can't escape this shit. Feeling that a little bit myself recently. I'm not gonna jump off a bridge. However, I was like, I feel you, George Bailey. Being alive is hard.
At the beginning of the movie, when the angels or whatever are talking about, well, George Bailey's been feeling a little discouraged.
Yeah.
And I'm like, discouraged? I don't know if that's the word I'd use, but then again, I have like dropped a pen or something and bent over to pick it up and been like, I'm gonna fucking kill myself. So maybe that's the right word for it.
I spilled a can of sparkling water in my kitchen earlier today, and after that spill, I spilled it and then I cleaned it up. And after that, I felt so stupid for spilling that sparkling water that I laid on the floor of the kitchen for 20 minutes.
That is,
I was literally just like, I literally cannot bring myself to move after what I just did.
That's a completely healthy reaction to spilling something. Spilling something is the worst feeling in the world.
Yeah. Because I was just like, okay, cool, great. Love that I can't trust myself to put down a beverage. So, that's how I've been, which is like, it's fine. We all have those times. We all go through those seasons of life. I also feel like I might have a little bit of like seasonal depression or something going on.
Yeah.
I've just been feeling kind of low.
Yep.
But I'm gonna be okay. But that's how I am. How are you, David?
I'm doing okay.
Good.
I'm doing good. I had a good weekend. Busy weekend. Lots of time with family. Both like went out with my dad a few times, and then had some cousins in town this morning to visit with grandmother. So that's been nice.
Nice.
And it's mostly been nice. There's a little bit of awkwardness with some of my extended family that I personally like have to get over because I'm not the most outgoing person, and these are people who I haven't seen in a very long time. But overall, it was good. And saw a play last night. Had a good time at that. You were in attendance.
I was running sound.
And you did a marvelous job.
Thank you.
So yeah, had a nice weekend. Got out of the house a bit, but it's also been a little bit busier than my normal weekend.
Nice.
Do you have anything you want to recommend?
I didn't prepare anything, so I guess no. Do you?
I watched True Detective season 1 for the
Oh yeah, that's a good one.
for the first time in my life.
You hadn't seen that before.
No,
We must have talked about that before, but I guess I forgot.
maybe I don't know.
Yeah.
Scorchingly hot take. It's awesome.
Yeah, really good show. Really good season of television. True Detective.
Pretty
season 1.
fucking great shit that
Yeah.
was like designed in a lab to be my thing. So.
Yeah, right, because it's sort of like dark and a dark and kind of horror coded detective procedural that also is just steeped in like existential dread and nihilism.
Yeah.
So yes, yeah.
Yeah. It's two fundamentally broken and haunted detectives investigating an incomprehensible evil. Like,
yeah. That is your shit.
It's cool.
Yeah.
So let's talk about It's a Wonderful Life, which I don't have we revealed this yet? This is my first time watching this movie.
I don't remember whether we have or not, but people might be dropping in for the first time on the show for the It's a Wonderful Life episode, so we might as well reiterate it. You had not seen this movie before.
No.
This was your first time watching Frank Capra's It's a Wonderful Life.
Have not seen a minute of this movie in my life. I don't even think I've like caught part of it on TV. Always been aware of it. And sort of knew it was like, hey, Jimmy Stewart tries to kill himself on Christmas Eve.
Yes. That's insane to me, first of all, because this movie, I was telling High Priestess Pod when I was getting ready to watch it for the show, I was saying to her that the first time I ever saw Frank Capra's film, It's a Wonderful Life, is undoubtedly so long ago that I literally don't remember. I probably first saw this movie when I was 3 or 4 years old or younger, right? And it has just been a consistent presence in my life around the holidays basically since then. This is probably one of the movies I've seen the most times because I think I watched it like most years for as long as I can remember at Christmas.
See, that's sort of wild to me. Not that like that's a wild thing to hear from your average person that they watch It's a Wonderful Life every year at Christmas.
Yeah.
It's just not the kind of movie I would expect you to watch every year at Christmas, even like in a family setting.
Well, I don't know. My mom really liked it. I think my dad likes it too, and it was just one of those ones that like I was kind of raised on, and so even before I had the ability to kind of form my own opinions as like a film fan about It's a Wonderful Life, it was sort of grandfathered in as a movie that I liked just because I had seen it so much in my formative years. Like there's kind of no phase of my life that I can pick out where I didn't have nostalgia for this movie. You know, just because it's been there for so long.
Okay.
You know, it's like fucking chicken nuggets and French fries. You know, it's just like, yeah, that's like, I don't need to think about whether I like this or not because I've been eating it since before I can remember. You know, like, yeah, I don't know. And like, it was interesting going back to it for the show and thinking maybe a little bit more critically about how do I feel about this movie other than like it's Christmas, It's a Wonderful Life song, right?
Yeah.
It was interesting to then be like, okay, let me try and apply some kind of like actual lens to this so that I have like a take on the podcast other than like, yeah, it's a Wonderful Life. I've seen this movie a million times. But yeah, I'll be interested to hear how this movie landed for you, having literally never seen it before, because we're coming at this thing from like totally different angles. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, it's always fun when we do that on the show.
Yeah.
And it adds a little bit more tension than just like, oh, the boys are watching Mad Max Fury Road. Wonder what they think of it.
Right.
Yeah. I had an interesting watch with this, which I guess we'll get it into.
Please tell me, by the way, that you watched the black and white version, because there's a fucking shit-ass colorized version haunting streaming platforms.
I watched the black and white version.
Okay, good.
I also watched the full version. I guess there's also an abridged version that's like an hour and 47 minutes.
Which I've I don't think I've literally ever watched. I think every time I've seen it, it's been the full version, and it's always been the black and white version. When I went to watch it last year around Christmas time, I was looking for it on streaming because for some reason I don't own this, even though I've seen it so much. And the first one that I found was the colorized version.
Wow.
And I got like maybe 2 minutes into it being like, maybe I can watch the colorized version. This was the easiest one to find. And, you know, I'm already here. I got like a couple minutes in and I was like, I can't fucking do this shit. This looks like a nightmare. It looks fucking awful.
I was on, so this was on Amazon Prime, and before I searched for it, on my homepage was Nosferatu.
Yeah.
And it was a colorized Nosferatu.
Ugh.
And then the banner was like this AI generated image.
Ugh.
Jeffrey, you're next, okay? I hope you've been watching the news, buddy, because you're next. What the hell are you doing?
We shouldn't be colorizing movies that
No.
were not shot in color.
No.
It's,
oh my God.
Like, to some extent, I'm like, we also maybe shouldn't be desaturating movies that were shot in color. Speaking of Mad Max with the black and chrome edition, but I feel like that there's more, you can have more of a, I feel like there's
an artistically there's an artistic vision and purpose behind that,
right?
More than like, oh, it's the 4K and they fucked with the color grading again just because,
right? But like anytime you're colorizing a movie from like the fucking 40s, I'm just like, is this literally just because you think modern audiences equate like black and white equals boring?
I sort of think that's it.
I fucking hate it so much.
And maybe like at the time, because I know they did this with like Casablanca too, and that was super controversial.
Yeah.
Maybe at the time it was a bit of like an experiment, and you know, trying to get it onto TVs and make it palatable for modern audiences. But at this point, what are we doing here?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. Anyway, so I'm glad that you watched the non-colorized version.
I'm a little surprised there's an abridged version, because
Yeah.
one of my criticisms of this film is I think it's a little long.
Yeah.
And it's sort of weird to have a version that is shorter that possibly clears up that criticism.
It is a little long. It is a little long. We're in like 2 hour, 15-minute territory with this thing. And by the time George Bailey wishes that he'd never been born, you've been watching the movie for like 2 hours.
Yeah.
It does take a while to get there. As I have seen this movie over the years, I feel like the runtime is often a thing where it's like, okay, yeah, like it's the holiday season, I'm gonna watch It's a Wonderful Life. I either have to carve out like 2.5 hours, or it has to be like kind of playing in the background, or what has happened many, many times, I'm starting it and then I'm falling asleep.
Yeah, it's sort of like other Christmas movies that air on cable TV just on repeat during the holidays, like A Christmas Story.
Right.
This movie sort of works with like the big scenes. You can tune in for the big scenes,
Right.
and then sort of, you know, go get some more eggnog and Christmas cookies.
Yeah.
While some of the less memorable ones are on,
Right.
and then come back in for, you know, the Pottersville stuff.
Yeah, but when I don't know, when Mr. Potter's fucking right hand man is showing him the blueprints of Bailey Park and being like, "This is a big deal. You should be paying attention to this." That's when you can like go and do your refill or whatever.
The land development subplot.
Yeah, there's
my
like
favorite part of the movie.
There's like, I forgot how long that scene was, and as I was watching it, I was like, do we need this scene literally at all? Because I already got that Mr. Potter is the bad guy and that he's a greedy money grubbing old capitalist, right? And we sort of don't need the like 3 to 5 minute scene where his fucking like head contractor dude is like telling him how bad Bailey Park is for his business. It's like, I already got that Potter's motivation is he wants to crush the building and loan. Like, you are reinforcing a motivation that has already been well established. You don't need to be doing any of this.
Yeah. When Mr. Potter comes on screen, the vibe is like he's a greedy, money-grubbing villain that would make Ebenezer Scrooge say, that guy's a little intense.
Yeah, definitely more racist than we see Ebenezer Scrooge being. He's fucking almost throwing around the W slur for Italians. He's
Well-
like, a bunch of garlic eaters.
Well, I don't know about Scrooge in Muppet Christmas Carol. He does throw Muppets multiple times in that movie.
That's true. You can't be throwing Muppets. I feel like that is racist. Anyway, so we talked about some of the background on this movie. It was released obviously in the 40s, and it kind of flopped a little bit, and then it blew up on cable, and now it's just like a certified fucking 5-star Christmas classic. Not 5-star in terms of quality, but it is like it has achieved the highest level of this is a fucking Christmas classic movie that there is.
But I think this has also achieved just general appreciation.
Yeah,
and
people like this movie.
Like this is up. I was looking, and like George Bailey and Mr. Potter are in the top 10 AFI list for heroes and villains.
Yeah.
This is, by all accounts, one of the greatest movies of all time.
Wow, and we'll find out if it is also
Yeah.
the greatest movie ever made.
Yeah.
In addition to that, this isn't the oldest movie we've covered, is it?
It might be. It's between this. No, I think this is the oldest one. I think Sunset Boulevard is the 50s.
Okay, yeah.
Off the top of my head.
So this is probably our oldest film so far.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, we can get into it.
Yeah.
We start, as you sort of mentioned, with some nebulas in the sky that blink when they talk, and these are ostensibly angels. Because I have like the whole nostalgia thing, it's hard to like separate that out. I'm really interested in how you felt about this way of portraying, like, because they're sort of the framing device for the movie for the first like 2 hours, right?
Yeah, they're narrating the movie,
right? And so we open with this, and then we check back in with these like blinking nebulas with voices throughout. How did that work for you? Like, how did you feel about this?
It's sort of interesting because this movie is really dialing in on the like red-blooded Christian conservative American ideals.
This is a God-loving movie.
Yeah, like this is a movie that is like, remember when America? It's a make America great again ass movie.
Yes,
sort of
a little bit. Yeah. There's definitely nationalism in this movie. There is for sure a Christian streak to, like, a faith-based streak. To this movie as well.
But definitely like baseball and apple pie kind of America view of America.
Yeah.
Especially with the casting of Jimmy Stewart.
Well, yeah.
Who's like America's golden boy. So it is sort of interesting to me that a movie as Christian as this portrays the angels as galaxies, as nebulas, as something that something less traditionally Christian and more like, to use a phrase that you use a lot, like wooey woo.
Yeah.
It's like
yeah. Where it's not like we're not in some fucking heaven set with a cloud, a sky full of clouds painted as a backdrop with a bunch of dudes wearing like fucking togas and wings and halos.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's weirder than that. I also feel this way about it. Cause like, again, I was trying to watch this movie, not as if it was the first time, cause that's an impossible headspace for me to put myself into, but I was trying to be a little bit more analytical about it and really think about this decision. And I was like, I kind of think this is the least goofy way you can do what they're doing. Because if it was just guys in angel costumes, that would be way goofier. And it does feel like there is a little bit of like, it almost feels like it's a little bit more reverential to just be like, yeah, they're just like blinking lights in the sky or some shit.
Yeah, this movie is a parable.
Yeah.
And I sort of think like if it played into that parable theming a little bit more, this would be like a 90-minute movie with guys in angel costumes, just laying out the themes of the movie really plainly,
right? And then it's just a movie that you would find in like a church library and nowhere else.
Yeah, I mean, it would be a little bit more hokey and cheesy that way.
Yeah.
And I I think this movie does a much more elegant job of conveying its themes and telling its story, while still like acknowledging that, like, yeah, there's a little bit of Christmas Carol in here. There's a little bit of that bedtime story parable thing going on here.
Yeah.
But this is also kind of a movie that has a little bit more to say than that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, it was interesting. It was an interesting way to portray the angels. However, I would not trust an angel that's named Clarence.
Yeah.
That name just does not garner a lot of trust in me.
Yeah. I love that the two boss angels, Joseph and the other one, are like these big kind of nebulas, and then Clarence is like one star. Because he's an angel second class, he doesn't have his wings yet, all that shit. And I also like when they're just blinking lights on the screen, when one of them's like, "Oh, what's that book you have there?" And he's like, "The Adventures of Tom Sawyer." And I'm like, these celestial bodies are light years away from each other. I'm not sure how this guy's seeing what book this star is carrying. But yeah, Clarence is a dork ass name for an angel. But that's sort of the point.
Yeah,
he's a dork ass angel.
He's the angel that all the other angels bully.
Yeah,
and call a nerd.
Yeah, he is a nerd.
I'm wondering, like, what the significance of Tom Sawyer is. There a significance to him reading Tom Sawyer that you can? I've never read Tom Sawyer.
I feel like I read The Adventures of Huck Finn, which is a different book.
Yeah.
In school, but I don't think I ever read Tom Sawyer.
I do like the joke later in the movie, in the Pottersville sequence, when Clarence is like, "Oh, Mark Twain's got a new book coming out."
We'll get to it, but I love how much everything he says freaks out the guy who's like working on that bridge. Like, there's like, because after they go in the water, this guy who is in like, it seems like he's in like a toll booth or something.
Yeah, something like that.
Is like helping them dry out. And like the line about Mark Twain coming out with a new book and all this other shit about how like, oh, I'm 287 years old or whatever he says. Every single thing out of his mouth, instead of this toll worker being like, this guy's insane, he's like, what the fuck? He's a fucking ghost. He just seems to take it very seriously.
Yeah.
Yeah. So these angels are talking about, there's a guy named George Bailey. We actually, the very beginning of the movie is we hear a bunch of people praying for George Bailey.
Mm-hmm.
And so the angels are like, hey, a lot of messages coming down from Earth about like all of these people are praying for the same guy. We better look into this. And it's Clarence's task that he's being assigned to get his wings or whatever. But before he can go help George Bailey, he has to learn every single thing about him for 2 hours. So then we start in on like young George Bailey.
Yeah, George saves his brother from drowning while sledding.
Yep.
And this somehow is like the defining moment of his life. This will define George Bailey's path as a human being.
I mean, to be fair, saving your sibling when you're both kids from like dying is like a pretty big, like that's a pretty impactful moment for both of your lives. Like if it had gone differently, I don't think it's crazy to be like, yeah, no, like his whole fucking life and the whole like town is different. This did make me think about when I was watching this, because I have an older brother. And he, much like George Bailey saves Harry Bailey, my older brother did save my life one time when we were kids.
Oh, I don't know that you told me the story.
Yeah. I was just thinking about it while I was watching the movie. And one time, he and I were both in our parents' old like Volkswagen camper van, which had like a stove in it. And we were, he and I were like cooking SpaghettiOs like in the van. And we were eating the SpaghettiOs with like cut up hot dogs, and my parents, I don't remember where they were, but they were not in the van with us. And I started choking on a piece of hot dog that I was like swallowing whole, and I straight up could not breathe. Like my airway was like fully blocked. And my older brother gave me the Heimlich. He did the thing where he came up behind me and like grabbed my chest and like forced the air out of my lungs. And I like spat out this fucking piece of unchewed hot dog that I was choking on. and I truly think I would have died. Like I like the memory's pretty faint because I was pretty young when this happened. But thinking back on it, I do sort of remember like I couldn't breathe at all, and I was like starting to lose consciousness. And then like he got it out, and I could breathe again. And I was like, oh shit! Like, if my older brother had never been born, I'd be in Harry Bailey's shoes. I'd be fucking dead. And then every man on the aircraft carrier that I protected would have been dead too. But yeah, I don't know. Just kind of a weird thing that I was thinking about. I was like, oh yeah, remember when my older brother saved my life? I've thanked him for it, but probably not enough. I don't know.
I did get kind of emotional at the end when when Harry?
Yeah.
That's his brother's name?
Yeah, Harry.
When Harry shows up at the end and comes into George's house. When the entire town has decided to invade George Bailey's house on Christmas Eve.
Throw money at him.
Give him money.
Yeah.
When his brother came in, I got kind of emotional over that.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. Brothers are a nice thing to have. Especially when they save your life by pulling you out of a freezing lake,
but
or
also
performing the Heimlich while you're choking on hot dog.
Hot dogs.
Basically, same level of heroism.
What also, like, these kids are sledding onto a frozen lake?
Yeah.
What the fuck did you think was going to happen?
It's funny, too, because, like, it seems like they were aware of the break in the ice, and they've put, like, a bunch of, like, upside-down, like, pails or buckets on the ice, like, around the part where it's broken, and there's just, like, water underneath. And it's like, okay, but if you're sledding down a hill and you hit one of the pails, you're just going to go through it and then into the, like, it's not going to stop you. It seems like they thought these, like, overturned buckets were going to, like, stop Harry from, like, launching into this frozen pool. And it's like, nah, he's like, there's no brakes on this thing, you know? But yeah, so, because of that, George goes deaf in one ear. Because, you know, it's very, very cold. And, he had, like, an infection or something afterward. And so he lost his hearing.
We have George works in Mr. Gower's drugstore. Mr. Gower learns that his son has died.
Yes,
and
of Spanish influenza, because that's how long ago this was.
Yeah, this is back in the whatever, the 1920s.
Yeah,
or
I think it would be. Yeah. But I like the establishing shot too when we're going into Gower's drugstore, where we see Mr. Potter in a horse-drawn carriage that is sharing the roads with automobiles. What a chaotic time that must have been. I was just thinking about it and being like, man, you could, like, if you're on the ground floor of getting a car, you just have to, like, sit in traffic behind horses. It's just fucking insane that was, like, a time in this country. But then, we're in Gower's store. And his son has died of the Spanish flu. He's having a very bad day at work, understandably. He should have taken the day off. He should not be. He should be like, sorry, folks, pharmacy is closed.
Yeah,
today.
he almost mixes someone's drugs wrong and would have poisoned them.
Yeah. So the choice to keep a jar of rat poison.
Yeah.
As a pharmacist, in the same room and on the same surface that you have all of your medicine, bad decision.
Like I've done, I get trainings every year.
Yeah.
For hazardous materials, storing hazardous materials.
Yeah.
In the doctor's office, and I don't even technically work in the doctor's office.
Yeah.
But
well,
I'm like,
I mean, this is it's the 20s, man.
Dog should have known this. Yeah, I guess they were prescribing like cocaine back then.
They didn't have rules like that back then. It's like, oh yeah, you keep your rat poison right next to all the medicine, so that if the rats come and try and raid your medicine,
it's funny that Mr. Gower is apparently a respected pharmacist in this town, because I cannot understand a word that this motherfucker says. He's just
I think it's like one of his first lines. It's one of my favorite line deliveries in the entire movie, is when George first comes in to work in this scene. Mr. Gower has already gotten the bad news, and George is like whistling. He's like whistling a little ditty, and Mr. Gower's like, George, Do I pay you to be a canary? Just this grumpy cantankerous old fuck. Oh, he's so good. And I mean, there's stuff with Mr. Gower because it's like he's drinking a lot after receiving this news. We see him like taking big old swigs from something, rum or whiskey or something. And then also like later on when he's fucking beating George, it's like this man is coping with this grief in a destructive way. But I do feel kind of bad for the guy. I feel like I feel like empathetic toward this character pretty immediately once they like reveal what the thing is, which is pretty much right away.
Yeah, and it's a good additional setup for George's character.
Yeah.
Slightly contrasted with when the girls come in and he's talking to the girls and he's like, George wants to be an explorer.
Yes.
He wants to see the world. That's his thing. That's his thing for the whole movie. And he's like, yeah, I'm gonna have harems and I'm gonna have 3 or 4 wives. Yeah. And it's like this fucking kid being like, I'm gonna bang a bunch of ladies all over the world.
It was the time, right? He was just reading these newspaper stories about these guys going and discovering whole new countries that already existed, but now it's a real place because a white person got there, and he wants that to be him. It's it's of another time. The charming thing about him, right, is just that he's got big ambitions. He's got big aspirations.
I'm just sort of gobsmacked that this child knows the word harem.
Yeah. That's true. Yeah. I also like because he says that to Mary, little Mary Hatch. And she's sort of she's enraptured with all of his stuff about being an explorer and everything, but really she just likes him. She's just into him. And I like him bending down and her being like, is this the ear that you can't hear on? George Bailey, I'll love you till the day I die. It's very cute. I also like, so it's Mary and Violet, who we will see.
Violet.
Violet. Mary.
But we're almost to Jimmy Stewart. Sorry.
But I like the moment with Violet because even as a little child here, Mary and Violet have characteristics that we see when they grow up here in a second. And Violet is just a woman who really likes getting attention from men. That's a thing about her. And I think in the movie it's not painted as necessarily a bad thing, which I think is kind of impressive for a movie from 1946, that it's like she seems three-dimensional, she seems like a whole person, right? And it seems like the movie's not condemning her for like appreciating when men look at her, right?
And I don't think George treats her that way either. Like you can tell like George is genuinely her friend and does care for her.
Yes.
And is attracted to her like every other guy.
He
in the
likes
town.
Violet, but it's like the movie isn't painting her as like a floozy or anything.
Yeah.
It's just like, this is a flirty lady. She's a flirty lady, right? And even as a kid, she's like kind of flirting with like kid George here. And my favorite is when she's like, help me down. And he goes, help you down? Just incensed that she would even ask this. Is so funny. But yeah, so then fucking George figures out what has happened with the medicine, and he confronts Gower about it. And he's like, or first he goes and sees his dad because he wants to ask his dad for advice once he realizes what has happened. And that's when we see his dad and Potter kind of going at it, right? So this is our introduction to sort of the struggle against Mr. Potter that he inherits for like the rest of the movie. And I like him standing up for his dad here, where like Mr. Potter's like dressing down his dad, and he's like, "You can't say that about my father. He's the richest man in this town. He's bigger than you, bigger than anybody." Like I love him immediately. The thing that like we see that George as like a young boy can't take is like people disrespecting like his family, you know. Which I feel like it's important that we see this when he's younger, because it kind of continues to be the thing that keeps him in Bedford Falls is his like allegiance to his family.
Yeah, it's no wonder that this kid grows up to be Jimmy Stewart.
Right.
Like it's this is perfect casting for this character because Jimmy Stewart just it gives off this same, it feels like he is George Bailey.
Yeah, totally.
At this point, yeah, I mean, we do transition to Jimmy Stewart.
Yeah,
after
this kid gets the shit beat out of him by Mr. Gower, who then does apologize. And it's, but at the same time, I'm like, man, you're just hitting this kid, and his ear's bleeding too.
Oh yeah,
like he's hitting him till he bleeds, and I was just like, oh god. And the kid being like, don't hit my sore ear again. I was like, that's actually very upsetting.
Yeah.
Also, would it shock you, David, to find out that It's a Wonderful Life has a Justice Cry count?
No.
Yeah, I didn't think so.
Should I let me think here. I'm gonna go with I'm gonna aim high. I'm gonna go with 3.
Okay. The guess is 3. So I already am at cry count 1 in the scene with Mr. Gower.
Okay.
When Gower kind of breaks down and George does the whole like I know you're hurting, I know you feel bad, and they're both kind of crying. I was crying for the first time in this movie already, and it's like, I don't know, less than half an hour in or whatever.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now we have to talk about Jimmy Stewart.
Yes. So then it's Jimmy Stewart.
Now
I
it's
like
adult
that
Jimmy Stewart.
face. That's a good face.
My heart just like skipped a beat with joy when his first line of the movie, he's already going, "Oh no, nope," just drawn out that vowel.
I want a big one. Yeah.
I love Jimmy Stewart.
Yes.
I don't know if you know this about me.
I don't think I did know this about
Jimmy
you.
Stewart is one of my favorite actors of all time.
Yeah.
Definitely my favorite of his era.
He rocks. I'm with you on that. I also love Jimmy Stewart. A sidebar, High Priestess Pod and I also have a running joke that our younger dog Sonora is also a Jimmy Stewart super fan.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So we're 3 for 3 on Jimmy Stewart super fans in this house, I guess. But yeah, I love him as well. I really like him in this movie. It is a thing where it's like, okay, this is a movie from the 1940s. Jimmy Stewart is 38 in this movie. When he is first introduced as an actor playing George Bailey, he is supposed to be 21 years old. And it's like, no, like the scene where he's like at the kitchen table talking to his dad and being like, "Oh, Pop, oh," and he's like, and his dad's like, "Oh, you should go off to school or whatever." I'm just like, as much as I love Jimmy Stewart, he is not really selling "I'm a 21-year-old boy."
No.
he's fully like an almost 40-year-old man. But then that works better later in the movie when he sort of catches up to his real age.
Yeah.
But all that being said, like, I think he fucking rules in this movie.
I think, I love him in the classic American Golden Boy type roles, which this sort of is. But I also love him in Hitchcock, where he's sort of cast against type, and it is commenting on that. Like, there's a darker...
Yeah. One of my favorite performances I've seen from him is in Rope, where it's exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Where it kind of is playing with how wholesome and charming and safe he is, because his character in Rope has a lot of like dangerous ideas, right? Yeah.
And I think that is sort of the case here too, because he is wholesome and charming, but also,
But also the movie's about him killing himself.
Right, no, like he is damaged and dealing with a lot, and is a downtrodden man, and I like seeing him play vulnerability.
Yeah.
I like seeing him be angry.
Yeah.
That scene when he is just
telling his family,
screaming at those fucking goddamn kids to stop playing the piano.
Stop it.
It is really great to see that from him.
Yeah.
Because I think there's so many dimensions and so many different things that he can play really well.
Yeah.
I think he is my favorite part of this movie.
Yeah.
I don't think this movie works I had an interesting watch with this movie. I think it would have been way worse with anyone else in this lead role.
Yeah. I agree. I think thankfully it sort of is his movie. He's the whole thing more or less.
Yes.
And I think that it's perfect casting because so much of the movie does rest solely with this performance and this character. Because it's like, I totally agree. It's like Jimmy Stewart's the guy who can pull this off, right? So yeah, we meet him here. He's buying a suitcase that then gets given to him free as a gift, right? And I think it's Old Man Gower buys it for him. So everybody in town kind of loves George Bailey. Everyone wants to see him go off and, do his travels around Europe and go to college. He's kind of the golden boy, it seems like, is sort of the vibe. And we see him at home with his mom and dad, and Annie, who works for them.
Yes.
The optics of this are weird.
They're African American made.
Yes. She is being paid, but also it's just one of those.
It's one of those things.
It's one of those things where you're like, yes, America has a history of enslaving black people, and you can't decouple that from the optics of a white family with a black servant.
She's the only black person in this.
Yes.
Pristine, beautiful, all-American small town.
Yes.
That all being said, she's one of my favorite characters in the movie, and I think the movie does a really, really good job of making her. I wish the movie had more of her. She is just like a side character.
Yes.
But making her like a fully three-dimensional person.
Yes. Yeah. I do think in its own way, because this movie came out in 1946, this is like, kind of as close to good representation as you could expect from a major studio
This
film
is the best you were going to get.
in the 40s, right? Where it's like, first of all, the actress is named Lillian Randolph, who plays Annie. I think she gives a great performance, right? And it's cool to see a black actress giving a great performance in an American film from 1946. Like, that's cool to see. I agree. Annie is one of my favorite characters in this entire movie. Like, some of it is like kind of, stereotype stuff where she'll come in with kind of like a sassy observation that's kind of like the button on a scene or a little moment or whatever. But she does it really well. And I also think that she just has like a lot of like life and presence in these scenes. But yeah. And we get some stuff with, Harry is going to this dance. He wants George to come along. George is feeling weird about it because he's like, I'm going to be the old guy there because I'm 21 and these are all like high school seniors or whatever.
Who all also just look like adults at
yes,
this point.
everybody looks like they're over 30 years old.
Yeah. One thing about Annie before we move on, she did get the biggest laugh in the movie for me.
Yeah.
Which is at the end when everyone's giving George their money.
Yeah.
She runs and she's like, I've been saving this money for a divorce if I ever get married. And she dumps it on the table. That's very fucking funny line.
That's one of her best lines. I also really like one of her lines in this scene where George and his dad are kind of having a little heart-to-heart at the kitchen table. And she's like kind of standing and lingering. And George is like, well, Annie, if you really want to listen, you could sit down and you could pull up a chair. You'd be more comfortable. And she's like, I would if I thought there would be anything worth listening to.
Yeah.
Yeah. Annie rocks.
So there's the high school dance.
Yes.
George just straight up cucks this guy who's dancing with Mary.
Yes.
Imagine being cucked by James Stewart.
You couldn't even be mad about it because you'd just be like, yeah, that guy is really likable.
Jimmy Stewart. I love him.
Although
I just want to pinch his little cheeks.
Yeah, this guy is burned about it.
Yeah,
I feel like I would be like, it's Jimmy Stewart. What am I gonna do?
And then when everyone starts dancing the Charleston, his plan is to open up the floor of the
not his plan, David.
It's the other guy.
One of my favorite things about this scene is that there is this other guy who I've seen this movie so many times. Like, so many times that I have no clue what the actual count is. I still, for the life of me, cannot figure out who the guy with the pool key is and if we're supposed to have seen him before. Because he just kind of, like, this guy who had asked Mary to dance. he's very distinct looking. He's got kind of a big nose. He's all freckly. This movie's in black and white, but it seems like he probably has red hair, right? He's got kind of a very specific look, right? Then this other guy walks up, and this guy just starts. He's like the Joker of this high school dance.
Well,
he walks up and he's like, yeah, so I saw you got cucked on the dance floor by George Bailey. How about we introduce some absolute chaos to this situation? Like, he's just like the devil whispering in the
I think
no reason.
if this movie is a parable and it's about angels and God,
this guy's a demon.
I think this guy's Satan. I think off screen he's like going over to Mr. Potter's place and he's like, you gotta fucking buy out the building and loan. Gotta ruin this town.
Yeah.
Make George Bailey's life a living hell.
Yeah.
It's the cosmic battle.
That's right. It's just the battle for the soul of Bedford Falls.
I like that it totally backfires though. Yeah. And at the end they're just like, fuck it, let's go take a swim with everyone else too.
I really like the old fuddy-duddy teacher or principal or whatever who's been like, no, stop that, get out of there, and then eventually he's like, oh well, and he just jumps in and then they hold on a reaction shot of everybody who is standing around that guy for a while, and it's pretty funny just seeing all these people be like, oh goodness. I just realized I do need to take us back for 1 second. Because before we get to Buffalo Gals, which is kind of the next thing, we also have seen a few more characters before the high school dance here, which is we do get a little moment on the street where George is talking to Bert and Ernie, Bert the cop and Ernie the cab driver. And then
Violet walks by and everyone awoogas at her.
Yes, and I did want to hone in on that scene very briefly, just because I think it's really funny, where Violet's she's walking by, she knows she looks good, and they're complimenting her like, oh, that's some dress you got there, and she's like, oh, this old thing, I just wear it when I don't care how I look. And then I love her walking across the street, there's a guy walking the other direction who turns around to check out her ass, and he's turned around while walking across an intersection, and then a car just honks at him, and then in what I think is a masterpiece of comedic timing, that all happens, and then Ernie sticks his head out of the cab and goes, how would you like to, and George goes, yes. and then Bert looks at his watch and goes, oh well, I better get home and see what the wife's doing. And Ernie goes, family man. it's just the sequence of the guy getting honked at, the how would you like to, yes, and then the family man joke all in succession. It just really, really works for me.
It's funny. I like the scene a lot because it is just oh yeah, this is the stereotypical scene from the movie of this era.
Right.
Where
it's look at this blonde bombshell walking around and all these dudes salivating over her.
Real ooh boys.
Yeah.
Shit. Also, the getting home to see the wife, that's totally code for I'm gonna go home and fucking pound one out in the bathroom and hope my wife doesn't catch me.
Family man. Yes. But then anyway, so then they're all wet from falling in the pool.
Yeah, George has to lasso the moon. This is it's
the Buffalo Gals, can't you come out tonight? This is, for me, a person who was raised on this movie and has seen this scene a million times. I feel that this is one of the most romantic scenes I've ever seen. But I also have a lot of nostalgia and baggage associated with it, right? Because I saw this in formative years, and it, in some ways, I kind of think this movie and this scene sort of shaped my idea of what romance is.
Uh-huh.
So I don't know how it landed for you, but I think the whole early interaction between George and Mary here, where they're kind of flirting with each other, is very sweet and very endearing.
Parts of this scene worked for me.
Yeah.
Parts of this were a little silly and cheesy and weird, and I don't know how much of that is what I brought to it. The lassoing the moon, the making a wish and throwing a rock through the window.
What'd you wish for when you threw that rock?
Yeah,
like
that stuff's really good.
Yeah.
There's a few other moments where when Mary tells him that she's 18, and he goes like, "Oh, 18!
It's only last year you were 17.
Oh, fresh pussy, fresh legal pussy. Sounds great."
I don't know. Age of consent might have been younger than 18 in 1946.
Yeah, it could be.
I don't really know how the timeline of those laws shook out. If I did know that, I would be a libertarian.
And then when she loses her robe and is hiding in the hydrangea bushes, and he's just like, "I'm gonna hold your robe hostage because I want to see that legal bush, baby."
Right. So so that's kind of the thing with this scene. I think it's like very like sweet and cute and charming and endearing. And then the thing happens where he's standing on her robe tie, and she runs and loses the robe and is in the bush. And there is then a weird kind of power play that he does, because he's like, well, I've got a naked lady here. I got to take advantage of this situation. And that stuff has not aged as well as the rest of the scene. I still kind of think that it's like sort of cute and flirty. And I like that when the car pulls up and is like, "George, you gotta jump in. Your dad just had a stroke," that the first thing he does is puts the robe on the bush. He's like, he was never gonna actually...
Yeah, if he kept it, then this would be the movie about George Bailey, the psychopath.
Right. But I think even when he's kind of being like, "Sorry, what should I do here? This is a very interesting situation." I do think it's like, okay, we're
got an opportunity to see some bazongas here, and I'm gonna...
He's being a little mean, but I think he's being mean in a way that she's sort of cool with. Like, I think she's kind of playing along.
It matches the banter, the flirtatious tone of the scene. Just hasn't aged particularly well for me.
Yeah.
And became a little unintentionally funny.
Yeah. I think it's supposed to be a little funny, but I get what you mean, where maybe what was funny about it was not what was intended to be funny about.
Yeah. Not necessarily a criticism of the film that like I really hold to heart.
Yeah. It is very fucked up though when he says when she says, "I'll call the police," and he says he's like, "Oh, the office is all the way over there," like, and then he's like, "They'd be on my side too." And I was like, okay, first of all, that's probably true, and second of all, that's fucked. That the cops would show up and be like, "Oh, nice, naked lady in a bush." Finally, the fucking overnight shift in Bedford Falls is interesting. And we get to torment this naked lady in a bush. I also like this like fat cantankerous old fuck on his porch.
Kiss! Just kiss, you motherfuckers!
Why don't you kiss her instead of talking her to death? This youth is wasted on the wrong people.
Well, and Jimmy's like, "You want to see me kiss her? Yeah, I want to fucking pound my hog to you two making out on my lawn.
I'll show you some kissing, then I'll put hair back on your head," which is what makes Mary run away. She's like, "I don't want to be part of this. I don't want to be part of this guy's weird fetish." Where he watches teenagers make out from his porch. That's what he knew the dance was that night. And he was out there scouting. He's like, "Someone's going to be getting lucky after the dance, and I'm going to be around to see it." So then George's dad has a stroke and dies. And this is kind of the first thing that keeps him in town, right? Because before that, he's been talking, like in the scene with Mary with the whole Last of the Moon and whatnot. He's talking about how he's gonna go around Europe. He's gonna go to college and everything. And then when his dad dies, basically there's a scene with at the building and loan, his dad's business, where Mr. Potter, who's on the board, is basically like, "Well, now that Bailey's dead, we should just shutter the business because he basically was this business, and it shouldn't go on without him."
Yeah,
right? Which is a power play because he's just trying to infringe on their territory or whatever.
And George delivers this whole speech and tells him to go fuck himself in so many words.
Yeah, and the board's like, "Great leadership. We will only continue existing if you are in charge."
Yeah, because he wants to pass the business on to Uncle Billy.
Yes, Uncle Billy, who, so like,
Uncle Billy and his pet raven.
Yeah. So
and various woodland
squirrel.
creatures.
He's got a
squirrel. He's got
yeah.
an owl.
Uncle Billy is literally me. I have never related to a character more in the history of cinema, because Uncle Billy would forget his own fucking ass if it wasn't attached to his body, which is very much how I live my life. This whole thing where he's got like all the strings tied around his fingers to help him remember shit, and then the strings don't work and he forgets anyway. I was like, yeah, dog, same. I can put shit in my reminders app as much as I fucking want. I can put things on my calendar. I can set alarms and shit. I'm not gonna remember what the fuck I was supposed to do ever. Do not trust me with the $8,000 that you need to keep the building and loan afloat.
Yeah,
because I am an Uncle Billy ass motherfucker.
You'll leave that behind like a water bottle at a local business.
Yes, I have.
Or that one time you left your driver's license here and you drove like 2 hours.
Yeah.
Getting ready to leave on a trip.
You'd have to be much more specific, because I've done that exact thing many times.
Oh, okay. There's just one that I remember, but yeah.
I've lost expensive electronics by leaving them on planes. I've lost so many pairs of headphones and sunglasses. I have often joked that a business in our local community is not truly a pillar of Flagstaff until I have forgotten my water bottle there. Yeah.
I think when you die, you get everything that you lost back. I don't remember who said that, but I think you go up to heaven and God's like, well, you lost 532 pairs of socks. Here you go.
That's going to be a real problem for me. I'm going to have way more shit than I know what to do with, because I've lost a lot of shit. Anyway, yes, Uncle Billy just when he loses the money later and he feels so bad about it and he's like freaking the fuck out, it is sort of like it gives me a reaction that like a horror movie would give me, where I'm like, this makes me feel so viscerally upset because I have been in this exact position. But also I understand the board not wanting to put Uncle Billy in charge of the business and being like, George Bailey's got to do it. This guy can't fucking take care of anything.
I don't know what the deal is with this raven that just lives at the savings and loan.
I know.
But I looked it up. His name is Jimmy.
Jimmy the Raven.
Jimmy. They called him Jimmy the Crow because they mistook him for a raven. Has a filmography of over 1,000 films.
Wow, what a prolific
fucking
actor.
legend. Great actor in this film.
There should be Oscars for animals. I think I've said this before.
Yeah. Dog from The Thing.
Yeah.
Jonesy from Alien.
Messi from Anatomy of a Fall, probably.
The seagull in The Shallows and the seagull in The Lighthouse.
Yeah. Couple of good seagulls.
Yeah.
Yeah, and apparently Jimmy the Crow.
Jimmy the Crow.
Jimmy the Crow
was actually a raven.
He should get a Lifetime Achievement Award.
Yeah. Next Kennedy Center honors.
Definitely dead. That bird is definitely dead.
Dead as I think he lived for like 60 years.
They do live a long time,
which I didn't know.
Yeah, they live quite a while. Yes, like parrots live like human or slightly longer lifespans. Some birds are fucking. They'll just keep on going and going. Which is why, you know, if you're already partway through your life, you don't want to get a parrot because it'll outlive you and then it'll tell all your secrets after you've died.
Nazi war criminal. Nazi war criminal. I don't know why. I just thought it'd be funny.
I was thinking more like lactation fetish, Pornhub.com. I don't know why you were saying that out loud in the parrot. Maybe the parrot learned to read. It just starts quoting pornography you've been watching.
2 girls, 1 cup. 2 girls, 1 cup.
Stick it in my ass. Why is Grandpa's parrot sing? Anyway. So George stays around to keep up the building and loan.
Yeah, his brother comes back and the idea is like his brother's gonna go off to college.
Yeah.
George is gonna take care of it, and then his
And
brother's
Harry's
gonna
take over when he's done with college.
And then Harry comes back with a wife.
Yes, he comes back married, which is very funny because he's like, he gets off the train with just this woman standing next to him, and he's like, oh, by the way, shoot, I almost forgot. Meet my wife. and George is like, why don't you tell somebody? And I was like, was this a thing in the 40s? Were people just getting married off at college and like not saying?
I guess so.
Because they had telephones. You know, we see people talk on the phone.
But I like George's reaction where he like takes a second. And he's like, what do I do? Do I shake her hand? Do I say nice to me? Oh golly, nice to meet you.
Yeah.
Because he's clearly like, wife has now interfered with my plans to pawn off this business on my brother.
Right. And Harry, to his credit, is still very much like, you know, George, I know I said I was going to take over the building alone. I intend to stick with that. You know, like I'm going to make good on my promise. And it's really George's own internal conflict more than any like outside pressure from Harry. Because Harry's totally being like, no, yeah, I'm down to do the thing. And George being like, yeah, but like, he's talking about how his new father-in-law has him lined up for this job, and he just got married, and I should let him go off and do bigger and better things because he's already sort of on his way, right? And I like how Jimmy Stewart plays that internal turmoil of like, you know, I love my brother and I want what's best for him, but I also really want somebody else to run this fucking business so that I can leave. Also around here, there's a party, I think, for Harry coming back or something. And George and his mom are talking outside, and kissing on the mouth a couple of times, which like is fine for some families, but it does always strike me as visually a little uncomfortable.
Sure.
when George Bailey just has his arm around his mom and keeps kissing her on the lips. I was just like, we're in public. You're out in the street. Like, whoa.
Later, Georgie.
It's fine. People can show affection to their families in different ways. I do not come from a kissing on the lips.
Mother-son incest. Mother-son incest.
I assume you.
I was trying to do the parrot, but then that sounded like Jimmy Stewart parrot.
Was the parrot doing a Jimmy Stewart impression? You don't come from a kissing on the lips family, do you?
No. I mean, I think I probably did that when I was really, 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 really young.
Right.
But no.
Just always just a totally different way to live.
Yeah.
That's foreign to me, and I don't want to be an asshole about it. Everybody can do what they want to do. It's just always sort of fascinating and a little unnerving to me that people do that.
Yeah. But his mom is like, all right, Georgie, calm down. We'll do that later. Did you know that Mary's been making fuck eyes at you for her entire life?
Yeah. And,
you should go off and marry her.
And George very much does know. But he's reticent because he doesn't want to get attached. He doesn't want anything in Bedford Falls tying him down. So like really the whole thing with him and Mary is like he is fucking so in love with her. And he's like not allowing himself to be. He's like, nope, if I open that door, I will not be able to close it. So I'm just not going to do it. And also outside of the party here, there is a funny moment with Uncle Billy where Uncle Billy's like fucking drunk as shit. And it's just another little moment of comedy I liked in this movie where he's like, where's my hat? And it's on his head. And then Jimmy Stewart takes his hat off and hands it to him.
Yeah.
and then he's like, pointing him in the right direction. And Uncle Billy's like walks off screen. And then there's a huge crash and like a cat yowls. And he goes, I'm all right. He's also singing My Wild Irish Rose. Just some great drunk shenanigans from Billy.
And I like when Jimmy Stewart starts wandering through town and runs into Violet and starts flirting with her, and then the whole town just gathers around to watch them.
Okay, so here was a scene that did hit different for me watching it for the show than any of my previous watches. I don't think in any previous watch it sunk in for me how fucking insane it is that he is like stopped like in the median of the road, right? Talking to one person. And then the next time we cut to a wide shot, there are 12 people surrounding them in a circle, all pointing and laughing.
They have obstructed traffic at this point.
Fully like him saying to the local town bombshell, let's go and run around in the grass without our shoes on and
go hike and see the sunrise and
him
maybe fuck each other in the ass. Like
him doing
that's
this,
the vibe though. He's clearly just like, I just need to go out and get some pussy.
I think, yeah, right, because he doesn't want to think about Mary Hatch.
Yeah.
Right? So he's like, Violet's here. She's very attractive. She always enjoys getting attention from men. Maybe if I give her some attention.
Let's go ride the town bike.
Right. We'll figure something out, and then I won't be thinking about Mary anymore.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a shitty thing that he's doing here, because he is trying to use her. And she sort of picks up on that and is like, whoa, this is going way too fast. I'm not going to do any of this shit. And then, yes, he is publicly ridiculed by a crowd of onlookers, which is a little insane and I like a lot. But then he does eventually end up outside of Mary's house. He finds his way there. He's like, and she's standing at the second story window yelling down at him like, what are you doing here? You going to come inside? And he's like, well, I guess so. Since I'm here, I didn't mean to be here. I just sort of found myself in front of your house. That's weird.
Look, I have a condom in my pocket. How did that get there?
Oh, look at this engagement ring. How'd that get there? Anyway, but then she invites him in. I like him struggling with the gate. That bit's funny, where he can't figure out how to open it, and then he just kicks it open. And then he comes in and she puts on the Buffalo Gals vinyl.
She has the painting of George lassoing the moon, or the drawing of George lassoing the moon.
Very cute little cartoon. I like the little grumpy cartoon moon. It's all very cute and adorable.
It's very clear that she's just like, oh, you're finally here, and now we can start our life together.
Right. And she is also currently dating Sam Wainwright.
Yeah.
And her mom, Mary Hatch's fucking mom in this scene she's a lot, because she's like in her like nightgown. She's like clearly ready to go to bed, but she like cannot help but snoop on her daughter and like know what the fuck's going on. And so like George comes in and she's like yelling about that, and then she's like, well, you don't want to miss your call from Sam Wainwright. Sam Wainwright's gonna call any second here. And I'm like, I think her mom wants to fuck Sam Wainwright, because she seems really obsessed with making sure that her daughter takes this call. I just feel like maybe Sam is more mom's type than Mary's type. But yeah, I also love when George comes in and sits on the couch, and it's kind of awkward because George isn't allowing himself to let loose and have a good time and be comfortable in front of her, and she's kind of waiting for him to make a move, right? And I like when the mom's yelling down, and she's like, "Who is that?" And she's like, "Oh, it's George Bailey, mother." And she's like, "George Bailey, what does he want?" And she's like, "What do you want?" And he's like, eh. And she goes, "He's making violent love to me, mother."
Well, George has been a fucking stick in the mud this whole time, where he's like, he's just frustrated by every little thing that she does.
Right.
And she's like, I don't even know how I just came in to get out of the cold, you fucking evil bitch.
He sees her adorable cartoon that she's drawn of him lassoing the moon, and he's like, oh, yeah, that's nice.
Whatever.
Some joke. And yeah,
I just want to smack him in the face like, dude, bang her. All she wants is to bang you.
Yes. The character motivation is clear, but it is a moment where I think the movie wants us to be frustrated with him, and it is very frustrating, because you're like, fucking Donna Reed is in this living room being like, I am in love with you. Like, please make out with me. And you're like, no, sorry, Donna Reed. I have to go exploring. Like, you do just want to like smack him upside the head and be like, what the fuck is wrong with you?
Who does give a really great performance in this. And
Donna
it's
Reed
like,
is so good in this movie.
I mean, she's kind of the heart of the movie in some ways.
I like the stuff when they're young. I kind of like her even more in the later scenes, where like in the scenes that are kind of like the present of the movie, where he's fully unraveling.
Yeah.
I really love her during all of that
I
stuff,
think so,
because
too.
she's doing such a good job of playing, this is my husband who I love and care about, but also he's like scaring our kids and he's scaring me. And I love her trying to balance the situation and be like concerned about him and want to help him, but also want to like protect her kids and protect her home from him. It's just it's great stuff.
Yeah,
that
she's the cheerleader in his corner.
Yeah.
And I like that. It is sort of tying a bit into that old-timey misogynistic American view of like the wife is there to support her husband always.
Yeah.
But it is still inspiring that she's able to like rally the town behind him, and I think the movie makes it work.
It also feels true to her character that she does end up sort of being a woman who rears children and is a homemaker, and that is kind of her main job. It does feel true to the character that they've laid out. It like that definitely comes from a patriarchal, like gender essentialist mindset.
Yeah.
Right. But it also does feel like the thing that Mary Hatch does genuinely want for herself. Right. From everything that we've seen from her as a kid all the way through the movie, it seems like what she wants is to be George Bailey's wife.
Yeah, she's just
right?
she's just naturally a loving and caring person.
Yeah.
And that translates to her being a stay-at-home wife.
Yeah. But she's always presented as like intelligent, capable, charming.
Yeah.
And she has her own motivations and desires that kind of come up in the movie as well, right? There's in this scene, right? They get the call from Sam Wainwright after George Bailey has been like a fucking dick to her and is about to leave. And then Sam Wainwright wants to talk to George. And there is this great extended shot where it's Donna Reed and Jimmy Stewart with the phone between them. And you're hearing like Sam Wainwright's like tinny voice through the phone. And what he's talking about is like making soybeans into plastics, and it literally doesn't matter. Like the dialogue isn't important. What's important is that Donna Reed and Jimmy Stewart are really close together, both listening to this phone, and it's like getting really, really hot. Like it's like they're in such close proximity to each other that like you can just feel the like sexual chemistry like boiling over, and then being like, if we stand this close to each other for like 1 second longer, we're gonna start like making out. And eventually like that's what happens. Like eventually like
the next thing is they get married.
He and like in the phone scene, like he can't take it anymore, and he just kind of drops the receiver and it just grabs her and is like I'm going away. Like I'm not going to stay in Bedford Falls. Not for you, not for anybody. And she's just looking at him and she just says, "Oh, George," and he's like, "Oh shit." Right. And then they start making out.
Oh golly.
Oh golly. Oh, Donna Reed wants to bang me too much. I can't go to Europe. And then they get married.
Oh, let me see what that pussy do. I love Jimmy Stewart almost as much as I love doing an impression of Jimmy Stewart where he is unquenchably horny.
I love hitting it raw. That's how I have 4 kids. Yeah. Just doesn't feel the same. Not great at the pull-out method. That's how I ended up with all these kids.
Oh no, I forgot the condom at home. I guess I'll just have to hit it raw then.
You know, His Holiness in the Vatican says that you're not allowed to use those. Devout Catholic as well as randy as fuck.
Sorry about that, honey. I sneezed and it just all came out of me.
Who among us? Anyway, they get married. They're gonna go to their off for their honeymoon. They have these big plans, and then another thing happens that keeps George in Bedford Falls. This is the formula of this movie that, to your point, maybe they could have shortened a little bit, because the same thing happens a bunch of times, which is George is about to leave, and then something stops him.
Yeah.
Right? The thing that stops him this time is there's a run on the bank, because Uncle Billy fucking fails to make a deposit or some shit. I don't remember. It is Uncle Billy's fault here too.
I don't know.
I don't remember exactly what he does, but he fucks up, and there's a run on the bank,
and everyone shows up to try to pull their money out.
Yes,
I do have maybe my central problem with this movie that I want to like bounce off of you and see what you think is that the conceit of this movie is there's an evil banker, But what if there was a good banker?
Yeah. So it's and you're saying that that's a sticking point.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's hard because I don't actually know. First of all, I know nothing about the business of real estate or home loans, beyond just like cursory surface level whatever. It seems like the way the Bailey building and loan works is like they charge really low interest rates and everybody kind of pools their money to then give loans to other people in the community so that they can build like affordable housing, right? And you kind of pay it off when you can. If you miss a payment, they're not going to go after you, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
So it's like, and like presumably there is some interest applied to the loan that goes to the overhead of the Bailey building and loan. Although to hear Potter talk about it, and even to hear George Bailey talk about it, it kind of seems like they're just constantly losing money. So it's like, on the one hand, it's like the way that the movie frames this is it's like, yeah, in order for you to be a good banker, you have to not make money off of banking.
Yeah.
Which seems like is what he does.
Well, and the way that the world function, the way that the world functions, in everything except the Pottersville sequence, that's the fairy tale. That's the
right.
The idyllic, sweet, wonderful all-American town. Whereas like Pottersville, that's really how the world is.
Yeah.
Where it's like everything is run by greed and like human suffering.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, that's the real effects of capitalism.
Right.
Not what if there was just like an evil, grubby banker who rode in a horse-drawn carriage? That's the fantasy to me.
I think it kind of works for me though that George Bailey is sort of the good version, the light version of a man who's in the same business as Potter, because the movie goes out of its way to show that what is different about George, like what's good about him, is that he is genuinely like not profit motivated. Like he's not motivated by greed, he's not motivated by money. He actively like loses money to help make people's lives better multiple times in the movie, right?
Mm-hmm.
And here when he gives away his whole honeymoon fund to make people to tide people over until the bank reopens or whatever, right? Like this is a scene that kind of does that, and I'm like, are there any actual like people who run banks who behave this way? No, to your point, it's like it's a fantasy, right? This guy doesn't exist. But I think it's effective in the movie that he is a foil for Potter because they both basically have the same job, and that he is like totally eschewing the central part of like being a capitalist who runs a bank, which is like, I have to make money. He's just like, what if I didn't have to make money? What if I could just like help people and make their lives better? Right?
Yeah.
And to your point with this movie, like as a parable, I think it works in that regard. Right?
That's a fair point. Yeah, I think it's just a little hard for me to take. Like, what if there was a banker who gave out loans out of the goodness of his heart,
right?
And when expected to be paid back in rainbows and smiles,
right?
But this is one of the more effective scenes in the movie. I think like this is definitely one that I think is famous.
I love this scene. I love this scene so much.
1750.
Yes. Just giving her a kiss on the 1750.
I'm going to assault you now.
Yeah. I love the guy who won't budge on his like fucking $242 or whatever. He's like the first guy in line and he's just like, I'll take my $242. And George is like, literally, I just told you that is like a tenth of what I have total. And there is a crowd of 100 people. And this guy's like, not my fucking problem. I love Mary with the money, right? Because George is like, they're in a cab, they're gonna go to their honeymoon. George like runs into the bank to see what's happening and gets accosted by this mob. And Mary was still in the cab last we saw of her. And then as George is like trying to handle this crowd, Mary just is there with the envelope and goes, how much do you need? And just like, and that's one of those moments where we see Mary kind of like executing kind of her agency in this movie, right? Where it's like, no, yeah, she is a good partner to him, not because she just like is subservient, but because she like helps him with what he wants to do, which is help his community.
Yeah.
Right? And she's like an active participant in that.
And I really like the honeymoon scene that
Yeah.
they have where they
When they go to the house.
They go to the house on Sycamore Street or Sycamore Drive or whatever it is, the rundown old house that they were throwing rocks through the windows. And so she has posters up of all these vacation destinations and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea is like, this is their house and they're going to fix it up and live there together.
Yes.
That's a really like sweet kind of saccharine rose-colored glasses thing in this movie that did sort of work for me.
Yeah.
And then I love Bert and Ernie outside like the whole time.
Yes. Serenade, doing the like duet. And I also like it's like Ernie showing him in, and he's got the top hat on, and he leans back, and the hat tilts, and the water all pours off of it. Just a very funny little visual gag. Also, just like when George Bailey enters the house, and you see Donna Reed, and it's just like soft focus shot of Donna Reed smiling directly down the barrel of the camera, and she goes, "Welcome home, Mr. Bailey." I was like, okay, like this is definitely the fantasy of a man from the 1940s.
Oh boy.
However, it sort of works. Where I'm just like, "Welcome home, Mr. Bailey." Goddamn. Yeah. And it's very cute. It's very sweet.
Gonna break in the marital bed tonight multiple times over, I think.
Mary, do you know if any of these rooms aren't safe to bang in due to the fact that this house is rotting on its foundation? Because I plan on plowing you in as many of these rooms as we can. I don't want to fall through the floor while I'm fucking the shit out of my wife.
Are you ovulating, honey? Because I feel like I'm about to come a fucking blast. My balls are gonna explode deep inside of your cervix later.
Built up like Old Faithful after that kerfuffle down at the building alone. Yeah. So it's sweet, and that we get another like jump forward after this, right?
Yeah, he builds the housing development.
Yeah, Bailey Park. Yes, he built Bailey Park. Potter
offers him a job.
Yes, is like, all right, if you can't beat them, get them to join you.
Yeah,
in true capitalist fashion.
Like when Potter says something, he's like, "I'm an old man and people hate me," and I'm like, respect. I'm glad you know who you are.
We haven't really talked that much about Potter. We've sort of talked around Potter. I fucking love this performance. Lionel Barrymore is doing a lot as Mr. Potter.
Yeah.
Where he is like fully broad, like cartoonish villain. Where he's like, Mr. Bailey was weak, and that's why he was a failure.
Your father was a fucking pussy.
Yes.
And you're a weak little piece of shit. Nothing.
Yeah.
The gum on the bottom of my shoe. Would you like a job?
Yes.
This totally isn't a Machiavellian power play.
I just love how Lionel Barrymore, like, the way that he, like, inflects his words in his line. Like, I feel like so many of Potter's line readings are just, like, primo shit.
Yeah, he's deliciously evil.
I don't know if Lionel Barrymore was a stage actor, but he reads as stage actor to me.
This is like Emperor Palpatine.
Yeah,
he just loves being evil.
Yeah, you could totally imagine Mr. Potter being like, "If you strike me down, George Bailey, in all of your hatred." Yeah. So he gets offered a job by Potter here.
Yeah. Well, and I also love, I didn't realize this until maybe, I think the later scene when George Bailey comes in at like the end of his rope, as he says, Mr. Potter just has a bust of Napoleon in his office.
Yes. Oh, he also, in this scene, he also has a skull on his desk.
Yeah.
He's got like this little skull trinket.
Mm-hmm.
Just his decorating choices is like the most evil man who's ever lived. By contrast, in George's office at the Building and Loan, it's there when it's his dad's office, but then it stays there. There's a framed sort of inspirational quote on the wall that says, "All you take with you is that which you have given away." And I really, really like that as a subtle piece of like background
Yeah.
stuff in George's dad's office.
I'm glad that they don't draw too much attention to it.
Yeah.
Because that sort of becomes the theme of the movie.
Yes.
And in a cheesier version, it would be the quote that they repeat 3 times throughout the movie so you can set it up and remember and then pay it off.
But nobody ever says it out loud. It's just there in the background on the wall. And I really, really like it.
Yeah,
I like it as a contrast with, Potter's Napoleon bust and skull and shit.
his fucking Death Star control room of an office.
Yeah. So George Bailey is initially tempted to take the offer to work for Potter. And then
he's like, no, wait, I just remembered. You're fucking evil and I hate you.
And I love that the thing that does that is when he shakes Potter's hand. He shakes, but because he's like, can you give me some time to think about it? And Potter's like, sure, take all the time you need. And then George Bailey shakes Potter's hand and then looks at his hand as if he has wiped his own ass with it without toilet paper, and is just like, this is fucking disgusting. And then he wipes his hand off.
Yeah.
He's like, you're a fucking piece of garbage.
I forgot that I have a long-standing blood feud with you.
I forgot that you basically drove my father to his death. And I like that he keeps the cigar. Potter offers him a cigar, and there's a moment where you can see Jimmy Stewart think about putting the cigar down like in the ashtray, but then he's like, no, fuck it, I'm keeping this. I also like when they're building Bailey Park. And the Martinis are moving into their house in Bailey Park. Just the over-the-top cartoonish characterization of Italian immigrants in this movie.
Oh yeah, Mr. Martini.
Hey, it's the family Martini. We got our bottle of wine, we got our goat, we got our 15 children.
We got the bread, we got the bread, we got the wine, we got the cheese, boobada.
Me, Mr. Martini, I own my own house. It's truly like watching a movie from the 1940s and seeing how they treat Italian immigrants. I'm like, oh yeah, it's not just like a joke or a bit that we used to be racist toward them too. It's like, no, yeah, it's present in this movie. This is a racial stereotype of Italian immigrants. I'm surprised we didn't get any Irish stuff too. Maybe the Irish aren't welcome in Bedford Falls.
Here in Bedford Falls, we welcome people of all faiths and races, but no Irish.
No Irish people.
We don't want them to stay out.
None of the Irish.
World War II happens. I love the World War II montage of just all of these actors in front of stock footage, just like, okay, I'm going off to war now.
Yes. I, truly, basically green screened in front of actual, war film footage.
Yeah.
And then it's just like, oh, hey, there's Ernie the cabbie telling people to, storm the beach at Normandy or whatever.
From the comfort of a movie set in Hollywood.
Yes, it is. Obviously, this movie came out right after World War II.
This is 46?
Came out in 46.
Okay.
So it is a little silly when we just interrupt the movie for a war newsreel. It's okay. This is one of the moments of the movie that has aged for me the worst over time. It's like, okay, now it's the part where the narrator just tells us what everybody was doing during World War II. Mr. Potter was in charge of the draft board, and which I do like.
That is funny.
Yeah, when they check in with him, and he's like, 1A, 1A, 1A. just sending people off to their deaths.
Yeah, a little hard to call this. It's a hard pill to swallow that this movie is called "It's a Wonderful Life" post the discovery that the Holocaust was a thing that happened. Is it really that wonderful?
Hey, it's wonderful if you're white Anglo-Saxon in America. Otherwise, not so wonderful. Yeah. It's goofy. It is what
it's
it
goofy.
is. It's goofy.
It's goofy.
This is where we find out that Harry Bailey is like a war hero. He's a fighter pilot in World War II,
Mhm.
and he shot down 2 planes that were about to crash into a transport and saved every man's life, and he gets the Congressional Medal of Honor.
Yeah.
Which is where we pick up after the war montages. Basically, he's being awarded. He's, Mrs. Bailey is having dinner with the president's wife and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm. And George and Mary have had kids.
Yes, 4
they-
children.
They stayed behind to help with the war effort. Oh, I told you, my sperm is really potent.
Now, don't ever count out the Bailey swimmers. And
Sorry.
way more talk about George Bailey's cum on this episode than I had expected. I'm gonna lasso the moon with all these ropes I'm shooting. Whatever.
Sorry, everybody.
Buffalo gals, won't you come out tonight?
Oh.
And
Not with George Bailey. I think George
Yeah.
Bailey is like he's a one pump chump and then he's done.
yeah,
The pleasure of the woman does not occur to him.
I think
You think he's a tender lover?
I think Mary's making sure that she's getting taken care of one way or another, probably. I don't know. I feel like Mary doesn't strike me as a woman who's going to put up with
Yeah.
not finishing under her own roof.
She's probably busting out the strap at some point.
Or she's just like, I don't know, like just sit in that chair and play with yourself for a little bit while I get
All right,
myself
George, bend over and bite down hard.
up.
Oh,
Mary, I'm being
Mary!
pegged.
My prostate, Mary. I've never felt this alive.
Oh God. I bet Mary Hatch.
Just dragging this Christmas classic through the mud.
I bet Mary Hatch would peg George Bailey given the opportunity. I just don't know if they had the resources in the 1940s.
I if I had to be pegged by a woman,
Donna Reed.
Donnie Reed
You could do
much worse than Donna Reed. Yeah.
Beautiful woman. R.I.P.
Well, obviously not now.
No, yeah. Anyway,
I don't want to be pegged by zombie Donna Reed.
I don't know.
That'd be a hell of a story, though.
Maybe. It's fine. She's been dead for like 40 years. I don't feel bad for making these jokes. Yeah. So, we're caught up basically more or less with the present.
Yeah.
Right. So this is the night that shit goes down.
Yeah. Uncle Billy is at the bank with like $8,000, and Mr. Potter just fucking steals it.
Well, he doesn't even mean to.
Yeah.
It's an accident that Uncle Billy
But he
grabs
doesn't want to give it back.
Right. Uncle Billy grabs Mr. Potter's newspaper because there's an article in there about Harry Bailey, and Uncle Billy is like fucking talking Mr. Potter's ear off about, oh, Harry Bailey, George's little brother, look at him, he's a war hero. And then he hands Potter the newspaper back with the $8,000 fucking in the middle of the newspaper. And then Potter, I like that we do see a moment when Potter discovers the money in the newspaper. There is one moment where he has his assistant wheel him to the phone. He's like gonna call and tell them. And then he's like, wait a second, I'm the villain of this movie.
I'm rich and I'm greedy. I'm in a movie from the 40s.
Hold on a second, I just remembered I'm evil. And so he withholds this information and just hangs on to the money. Real dick move from Potter, but also Uncle Billy, my man, you gotta
don't give Uncle Billy the envelope filled with $8,000.
He really shouldn't be making deposits. I shouldn't be making deposits. Neither should Uncle Billy. Just don't trust a guy like me or Uncle Billy with $8,000. So after Uncle Billy loses the money, George Bailey's Night from Hell starts happening, right? Where it's like, okay, so the money's gone. We're freaking out about that. When he gets home, his kid is playing Hark the Herald Angels Sing on repeat, very loud, nonstop.
Very poorly.
One of his kids is sick. things are a little chaotic.
He spent all day running around town looking for this money, trying to retrace Uncle Billy's steps.
And I think there have been a couple of moments as well throughout the day where he's just been reminded of how he basically gave up all his dreams to just stay here in the town he grew up in. I feel like there's a couple passing comments in this Night from Hell as well, where people are like, oh, we all thought you were going to go off and make something of yourself or whatever. And he's also got this thing where like his little brother is like this war hero who's in the newspaper. And obviously he's happy for Harry, but he's feeling inadequate already. And then like the money thing also on top of it is just like, he's just fucking spiraling. So then before he yells at his family, he does have a sweet moment with his daughter Zuzu.
No, this is he's already been yelling at their asses.
Yeah, right.
He comes in like fully like in where's my goddamn dinner mode, and he's just yelling at the kids.
Yeah.
But then he goes up to see his daughter Zuzu, who's sick.
Yeah.
She caught a cold or something.
Yeah. And so he has kind of a sweet moment with Zuzu. It's like a sweet little scene where he's being a good dad, even though he's in a low place. But then he goes downstairs and he's like, oh, by the way, I want to talk to that fucking teacher, and because the wife's on the phone with the teacher anyway. Yeah. And he's like, give me that phone. And he just dresses this woman down. He's like, what do you mean, you stupid silly cow, sending my kid home with no clothes on, and now she's sick. If she dies, it'll be your fault, you fucking bitch. and Donna Reed is like, whoa. Right? And then
she thinks that the teacher's hung up. And then she realizes that she passed the phone to her husband.
Yeah.
So now it's Jimmy Stewart versus this fucking husband.
Yeah.
And he's just like, oh, well, yeah, your fucking wife's a whore and you're a drunk piece of shit loser. Fuck you.
Yeah. Just really going nuclear on this poor teacher and her husband.
I really like this because then we get the payoff of him getting punched in the face at the diner later. And it is so satisfying to watch Jimmy Stewart just get clocked in the face by this guy.
I love that this guy, his wife gets yelled at on the phone by an insane George Bailey. And then he receives some of that too. And then he goes out to martinis and just drinks. This guy is like, fuck everything. People suck so bad. My wife slaves away to take care of these people's shitty kids, right? And this is all the things she gets. I'm gonna go to the bar. And then he's sitting there sipping away, and he hears George Bailey, and he's like, it's Christmas after all. Now I get to punch this guy in
Christmas came early this year.
His fucking smug ass face.
I like the idea that this guy and his wife, the teacher, they are just my theory is that they're both just like the most loving, peaceful, happy-go-lucky people in the world.
Yeah.
And then all it takes is one bad day.
Yeah.
Just to drive this man to knock out George Bailey in this bar.
Yeah, Mr. Welch is he's taken it lying down for too long. Also, I like that we don't see the Welches when everyone brings the money to them at the end.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, Mr. Welch isn't there. He's still pissed. He's still like, no, fuck George Bailey. I don't give a shit if George Bailey goes to jail. Guy's an asshole. But yeah, so then George makes a bigger scene in front of his family. This is when he starts like throwing stuff around and yells at his kid to stop playing the piano. And then kind of the moment sinks in where he's like, I'm now just yelling at my family. And he like gets real quiet and apologizes. That moment from Jimmy Stewart, I just really, really like when he's like pissed and like throwing stuff around. And then he's like, hey, Petey, I'm really sorry. And Janie, I'm so sorry. Please continue playing. Right. And his family is just like terrified of him. And that's what sends him off into the storm. This is a moment that will make a guy think that he should just go die. Right. But before that, he goes and sees Potter. It's sort of his last. Oh, and I also really like Donna Reed here, doing the "Why must you torture the children?"
Yeah.
Great line read from her.
Mm-hmm.
And then she says, "Why don't you?" And she doesn't finish the sentence, which he's already thinking about throwing himself off a bridge when she doesn't finish what she thinks he should do.
Yeah, I mean, if I pissed off Donna Reed,
Yeah,
I'd be thinking that too.
I too would nosedive off a bridge.
Let me commit ritual suicide in front of my wife because
Yeah.
I made her angry.
Yes. But yeah, so then he goes to see Potter and he's like, "Hey man, we've had our differences. Please give me a loan so that I don't have to kill myself because all I have is this life insurance policy." And Potter's like, "What's the equity in that life insurance policy?" Like he's considering it. He's like $500 and he's like, "Get the fuck out of here.
You're worth more dead than alive." and then Jimmy's like, "Oh, I just had an idea."
"Oh, say, I am worth more dead than alive. Maybe I should exit this mortal coil.
Maybe I should pull a death of the salesman.
Yeah. So he goes to the bar, gets punched by Mr. Welch. And then after that, he leaves the bar drunk.
He's oh man, I want to drunk drive a Model T so bad. This is because he's going like 30 miles an hour and crashes into a tree and barely scathed. I feel like drunk driving a Model T would be really safe.
Yeah, he slams into this tree and like causes a huge gash on the tree, and he just kind of steps out of the car like nothing happened.
Yeah.
And this guy comes and starts like berating him about the tree. It's just like one more thing. And then George Bailey's gonna kill himself. he's standing on this bridge. He's like, it's all over for me.
Yeah.
And then this fucking
guy
just jumps
Clarence.
in. Yeah. So Clarence jumps in the river and George Bailey has to save him. Because this is a thing that Clarence says. He's basically like, "I knew, because I know you," because Clarence has been watching the movie that we've been watching. He's like, "I knew that if somebody else was in trouble, you would help them," which is why he jumps in, which is like, Clarence has a really good read on George Bailey. Because, yeah, absolutely. He is the guy that just will help anybody, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so George jumps in and saves him. And then they're in the fucking toll booth guy's little shack or whatever. And George is like, "Hey, so what's your deal? Why are you jumping in the river?" "I'm jumping in the river because I'm worth more dead than alive. I alienated my family and everybody hates me. What's your deal?"
And then Clarence is like, "I'm your guardian angel, and I'm trying to get my wings." And he says this to George Bailey no less than a dozen times throughout the sequence. Before George finally realizes what's going on.
Right. George is like, "Okay, so this man is clearly insane."
Right. But then after the whole Pottersville thing starts and everyone in the town is acting like they don't know him, he's finally like, "Wait, Clarence, what did you say? Something about you're an angel?"
Yes.
And I was never born?
Yeah, he's like,
"Oh, that all makes sense now. Why didn't you say something?"
I've been telling you that you were never born for a while now. But yeah, so the guy getting scared in the toll booth is very funny to me. Where Clarence is just like, "Oh, I'm an angel, AS2. That stands for Angel Second Class." And this guy is like, "What the fuck? There's a fucking angel? I'm getting the fuck out of here, dog. This is way too weird for me." He doesn't. I think that guy has no lines, but I just love his face acting. It's silly.
The sort of acting that suggests that he would go like, "Santa Maria," and then do the sign of the cross and then run away into the night.
Yes. Yeah. So the first place they go is Martini's again. But it's not Martini's anymore. It's now Nick's. So yeah, George Bailey wishes he'd never been born.
Yeah, George Bailey wishes he's never been born. They go to Nick's. I love Nick in this scene. Nick is fully just like, "Hey, you fucking..."
We serve hard drinks for men who want to get drunk fast, and we don't need any whatever he says, any weirdos around here to give the joint character.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love they start a little bit of a scene because Clarence tries to order a mulled wine, and George Bailey is insisting.
"What are you, some kind of fucking freak?"
And George Bailey is insisting that everyone knows him, even though nobody knows him, right? So they get kicked out, and I love Nick going, "All right, that's enough. Out you two pixies go, through the door or out the window." Nick rocks. He's so good. I also like that Nick is the bartender at Martini's.
Yeah.
But I guess if George Bailey had never been born, Nick would just own the place instead of Martini. Which I guess is worse, is what the movie's telling us, but whatever.
I don't know. Nick's bar looks like a much better hangout.
It looks
than
like a good
Martini's.
place to hang. I think it's also busier.
Yeah.
I think it's more poppin'.
Yeah.
But maybe the only thing that's better about Pottersville versus Bedford Falls. Although I don't know. All the strip clubs. That seems
Yeah,
pretty,
I mean, it's
fun.
like it's like in Back to the Future 2
Right.
when Marty McFly goes to Biff Town or whatever.
Yeah, I would almost venture to say that Back to the Future 2
was probably influenced by this. Yeah. But yeah, Pottersville has become a den of scum and villainy.
Yes.
With strip clubs and dance clubs and
because the way that we
big
show
predatory loan places,
right? The way that we show that Mr. Potter has corrupted Bedford Falls is like, yeah, there's pawn shops, like Cash for Gold, payday loans, but then also, yeah, it's like, oh no, sex workers exist here. What will we do? We must clutch our pearls. Traditional values.
The scariest thing in this sequence for me was the very prominent no left turn sign at the beginning of the town.
Yeah.
No left turn signs are just fascist, I think. I should be able to turn in either goddamn direction onto any street. If there's no median there, fuck you, I'm turning left.
But not on the one-way streets.
Not on the one-way streets, but if it's a two-way street and there's no median, and you have a no left turn sign there, I'm gonna burn I'm burning it all down. I'm burning capitalism to the ground.
No left turn signs are fascist.
I was literally thinking this the other day. And then this movie reaffirmed it for me.
I don't know enough about why those are instituted to agree with you or disagree. I'm sure there's probably a road safety reason why some intersections don't allow left turns, but you know what? Fuck it, I'm with you.
Well, it's a wonderful time. It's a wonderful
time.
It's a wonderful time. It's a wonderful life imagines that wonderful time when a man could drunk drive his Model T and turn in any direction that he wanted.
Turn that Model T left with a whole fucking handle of whiskey in your system.
Could drunk drive his Model T, almost jump off a bridge, and the cop at the end of the movie is like, all right, see ya. Not like you wanna spend the night in the drunk tank and sleep this off.
No, the cop's like, here's fucking $200 for the rough time that you're having. It's an easier time for white dudes driving drunk. So it's fucking it's all bad now.
Yeah.
Bedford Falls sucks. It's not Bedford Falls, it's Pottersville. He like goes and sees his house. And obviously nobody lives there. It's still this decrepit, rundown old shack. Because him and Mary never restored it. So he's freaking out about that. He goes and sees his mom. His mom doesn't recognize him and is very like cold to him. And also like a thing that was kind of sticking in my head this time specifically is I was like, oh yeah, she is not just playing a woman who doesn't know who this guy is. She's playing a woman whose husband and son are both dead. And she's like alone in the world, right? Because George never existed. Harry died.
Yeah.
Right? And her husband still had that stroke and died, right? So it's like that's why her demeanor is totally different. Not just because she doesn't know him, but because her life has been full of tragedy. And she's just like a shell of a person.
Yeah, she's
right?
Kind of a cantankerous, unsavory woman who's running a boarding house.
Yeah.
That's the way the movie's portraying her.
Right. And she's just like cold and suspicious.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, that's because, like her life has been garbage, And there's also the whole bit where they go to the where Bailey Park should be, and it's a graveyard, right? And they find Harry's tombstone there because he just fell through the ice and froze or drowned or whatever when he was a kid. And I like the bit there where George is like, no, that's a lie. He was a war hero. He saved every man on that transport. And Clarence is just like, every man on that transport died. Like, you don't fucking get it? You were never born, asshole.
That's what I've been telling you for the last 20 minutes.
Yeah.
While you've been wandering around this town making a fool of yourself.
Yes. And then George is like, I still don't believe this. The only thing that can make me not believe this is if my wife doesn't know who I am.
Oh, God, she's a librarian.
Yes, she's just about to close up the library. He says it so dramatically, like it's the worst thing that could happen to literally anyone.
Oh no, an educated woman.
Oh no, she got a degree. She knows the Dewey Decimal System. Someone taught my wife numbers.
That's witchcraft.
I won't stand for this. Women shouldn't be reading.
She should be home, ready to be bred or peg me sometimes. Every Friday night is peg night, and it's Christmas Eve after all.
Mary, get the strap. It's Christmas Eve, Mary.
Mary, I'm gonna be coming down that chimney tonight. I'm so sorry.
It's fine.
I'm so sorry for introducing this metafiction into the show.
Where George
Bailey is good.
I like it. It's good. She's just about to close up the library. She, the only thing that happens here is she doesn't know who he is, and a crazed man runs up to her and is like, "You're my wife!" Right? And she reacts the way you would, which is she runs away and screams.
I like that this movie tries very hard to make Donna Reed look like this mousy little waif
it's just Donna Reed with glasses
and like her hair tied back.
Yeah,
and they just put a bunch of like heavy makeup on her to make her look unattractive.
Yeah, but it's like I'm still looking at the hottest librarian of all time, right? And then this is what finally brings George around, and he's like, "Say, I don't think I should have wished that I'd never been born. This kind of sucks." Everything's bad now.
Yeah. I do like him punching Bert.
He does punch Bert. Yeah,
that's fun.
Yeah, and then he runs back to the bridge, and he wishes to live again. He asks. He says, "Please let me live again." He says, "Please, Clarence," and nothing happens. And then he says, "Please, God."
Mm-hmm.
The second he says God, snow starts falling because it stopped snowing. For whatever reason, George Bailey not being born also affected the global climate. And so there is snow that night when he has been born, but isn't when he hasn't. But the snow starts right as soon as he says, "Please, God."
Well, part of George Bailey's future ambitions is to like build skyscrapers and technological innovations. So maybe one day he defeats climate change.
Yeah. George Bailey solves climate change.
Yeah.
Not if he's never been born. Man, if he had solved climate change, if he had just left Bedford Falls. but then because he didn't, we're now living in the bad reality where George Bailey just retired to Bedford Falls. So he's back, and I am crying for the second time.
Okay.
When he says, "Please, God, I want to live again,"
yeah.
Snow starts falling.
Really, I mean, it's
the little church on Sundays youth group boy in me.
Sure.
It really got to me.
Sure, it's a really effective moment, and I love the close up on him as he says that, and then the snow starts falling, and you immediately know
that he's back.
Yep, it's a really, really good piece of visual storytelling.
And his mouth's bleeding again from being punched by Mr. Welch. And
I got punched in the face. That's right.
My mouth's bleeding, Bert. My mouth's bleeding. Zuzu's pedals. Yes, it's just all great shit from Jimmy Stewart here. He is doing Scrooge on Christmas morning, right?
He's running through streets and telling people Merry Christmas.
Right. And I love it so much. This is sort of the like big it's the big boisterous like joyful yell that this movie gets to do at the end, where Jimmy Stewart he's been charming, but he's been a little like restrained, or he's been under pressure. He's been, this performance has never been allowed to just be him being full of joy and just letting loose, right? And then in this last scene, he like really lets loose, and he's just like having a ball.
Yeah.
And it seems like he's having such a fun time. And like you're, by this point in the movie, you're really feeling for the character of George Bailey. So it's like equally fun to see like Jimmy Stewart just like go crank it up to like an 11 here. And also to see George Bailey like happy, right?
I like when he runs by Mr. Potter's place and he goes, "Merry Christmas, Mr. Potter," and Mr. Potter's like, "You belong in jail,
and
you
Happy New Year to you in jail."
Yeah, you fucking asshole.
Yes. And then
he comes back home.
George goes home, and Mary's not there. The kids are there, and he's like grabbing his kids and kissing them and stuff. And then Mary comes home.
"I'm sorry I was a deadbeat piece of shit to you guys."
Yes. Yeah, he's apologizing. Mary comes home. He's super stoked to see her, but she's like, "Yo, like, I get that you are like super happy, whatever. That's great. I have a surprise for you though, and it's everyone in the town is giving you all the money that they have." So then there's just a procession of people who come in to give him money to save the building and loan. We got, like you mentioned, like Harry shows up. We got basically everybody, like, Mr. Gower sends some money. You got, Annie shows up. Sam Wainwright sends a telegram
with a
HEEHAW and Merry Christmas. Yeah. Everybody saves the building and loan because they love George Bailey so much. He's such a good guy.
I like one of the things I like about this ending is it's chaotic and everyone's coming in and there's a lot of noise going on, and George Bailey's just kind of looking at all these people who appreciate him and love him, and he doesn't say anything really.
No, he's just
there's no big speech.
Like,
he's just like kind of just like soaking it all in.
I also really like he's been running through the streets. He's been out in the snow. He looks kind of like haggard. And I really like there's like one perfect curl of hair just right on his forehead.
Mm-hmm.
Like his hair's kind of wet and crazy. And then he's just got like one like adorable little curly cue. He just looks like a confused, like an amazed and confused like little boy on Christmas morning. Right? Like opening his presents or whatever. It's very endearing.
Mm-hmm.
And every time a bell rings, an angel gets his wings.
Yeah, he finds the Mark Twain book with the little note from Clarence in it.
We're singing Christmas songs. We're singing Auld Lang Syne and whatnot.
Yeah, and
I do like, by the way, with the bell ringing thing.
Mm-hmm.
I like when it comes up earlier in the movie.
Yes.
When Clarence is talking about it at the bar, and then Nick kicks him out of the bar, and he's just like, after they leave, he's just opening and closing the cash register over and over, and he's like, "Hey, look at me! I'm giving out wings."
The whole bar's laughing like it's knocking him dead.
Yeah. Nick's place seems awesome.
Yeah.
Teacher says every time a bell rings, an angel gets his wings. Attaboy, Clarence.
Attaboy, Clarence. It's a Wonderful Life.
Yes.
But is it a wonderful movie?
Great question, David.
Who should we ask first?
David. I guess I'll ask you first. Is Frank Capra's It's a Wonderful Life from 1946 the greatest movie ever made?
I don't want to give you a lump of coal, but I'm going to say no.
Okay, that's an understandable opinion for someone who saw this movie for the first time in their 30s.
And as someone who has seen it for the first time just a few hours before this recording, for the first time in my 30s, I'm a little unsure of how I feel about it.
Right.
There's stuff here that works for me. I think Jimmy Stewart delivers an incredible performance, and like, I don't want to say puts this movie on this back, but he is the glue holding this thing together.
Yeah.
Every moment of saccharine, sappy, nostalgic, tug on your heartstrings. Every one of those moments is sold by Jimmy Stewart.
Yeah.
Making George Bailey just the nicest, most generous guy that has ever lived.
Yeah.
And I also think Donna Reed's great. I think Lionel Barrymore is a lot of fun as Mr. Potter. In general, I think this movie is too long and the pacing wore on me a little bit. Like the first half of this movie, I felt like was just like there was a lot happening all at once, and I wasn't really sure where things were going, and I was kind of waiting to see what this movie had in store for me. I think the second half is a lot stronger.
Yeah.
Not even just the Pottersville stuff, but after George gets married and we get a better sense of who George is and that sort of thing. I liked it. I think I did not think this movie was either good or bad. I'm sort of in the middle on it.
Yeah.
And I think I just need to watch it again and see how I feel a second time around.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the way I was engaging with this movie was sort of ironically and making a lot of jokes to myself that did in fact show up on the podcast this time. I can see why it has the reputation that it does, though. And I like that this movie is sort of showing the core struggle of George Bailey being like wanting to experience the world and sort of being stuck in his hometown is something that I related to more than I thought I would with his character. And I love that this movie contrasts the uglier side of life, and while also trying to be a heartwarming Christmas tale. Like it is maybe somewhat of a squeaky clean, nostalgic view of America, but it does deal with things like depression and suicide and poverty and marital strife in a way that feels a little bit more honest than a lot of other films from the era.
Yeah, totally.
Not the greatest movie ever made. I gotta sit on it, maybe watch it in a year or so, and see how I feel about it next time around. But if you haven't seen it, you should watch it because it's a classic, and I think classic films deserve to be watched and evaluated by people if you care about movies. And even if you don't necessarily like it, you should seek it out all the same and give it a shot. Justice is It's a Wonderful Life, the greatest movie ever made.
David, so obviously I have polar opposite relationship with this movie that you do, as we discussed. So like very hard to disentangle all of my past feelings about It's a Wonderful Life from like watching it for the show. And to some degree, like that's an exercise in futility. Like I kind of can't do that, but I'm gonna try to like view it objectively. So I do agree with you, first of all, that I do think this movie is a little too long. I think that there is stuff here that could have been cut, and there's whole shit that we didn't even talk about in our recap of the movie, which would be great candidates to cut, like when George Bailey like lends Violet money and they have that whole scene, and it's I think that's in his like Hell Night where he ends up like on the bridge. It's just like one more thing, you know. And there's so many one more things in this movie, right? Where it's like, okay, I get it, and we're reinforcing the same message and the same themes with a different scene that's coming at it from like only slightly of a different angle, over and over and over and over again.
Like you said, the Pottersville thing is the very end of the movie in like the last 20 minutes, and it takes it's a long road to get there.
Yeah, and then the Pottersville stuff is honestly shorter than it could be. Like I'm almost like I kind of wish we maybe had spent more time on this.
Yeah.
You know. So like that is like an issue that I have with the movie, but that being said, there's also a ton about this movie that I really like, and kind of the only thing that I don't like is that it feels a little overlong. Even some of the stuff where it's like, yeah, there's like, you know, like gender essentialist stuff here. There's like there's areas where we're confronted with some of America's history in terms of like race stuff in this movie, which is just unavoidable from a movie from 1946. But like that stuff I don't hold against the movie because it's just a product of its time. It was made when it was made, you know. And a lot of the stuff in this movie that I do like basically all the performances, I kind of think, maybe with an exception of a couple of the kid actors who are his kids, who are kind of just shouting their lines at the end of this movie, with those potential exceptions, I think every performance in this movie is good. I really, really love Jimmy Stewart and Donna Reed, especially. The movie is mostly the two of them, so it really works to its advantage that we have them. I like all the side characters. I love Bert and Ernie. I love Violet. Like all the like little residents of Bedford Falls who kind of fill out the edges of this thing. I just think they're all very well cast, well played, and they're all very endearing. Like it just feels like they bring so much life to this world, and it gets you to care more about the story and about the character of George Bailey. And it's like the movie kind of succeeds or fails based on you caring about him, so that works really well for me. Also think like for a movie from the 40s, it's pretty well shot. There's a couple of like jarring edits, because I think the art of editing was still coming into its own. So there are a couple of cuts that are just like, you'll cut from two people standing kind of face to face in a scene to like a very slightly different shot of that same thing. And it's a little like it can take your eyes a second to process that a cut just happened.
It's clear that it was supposed to be like a seamless continuation of that conversation.
But then like one of them is slightly off or whatever.
It's just a slight edit. Yeah.
Yes. So like there's stuff like that in here, which is basically like you can chalk it up to the art of movie making was not that old. But also I think some of the filmmaking in this is pretty good. There's a few decent like the car accident where he hits the tree. They just shot a car actually hitting a tree, and they do it in a pretty long take. And there's, I think Jimmy Stewart's actually driving that car because he climbs out of it. If not, they did a good job with the masking the stunt driver. Shit like that. It looks pretty good. It also looks great in black and white. I just think that the way that they shot it translates very nicely. Like the image is nice. So lots to like. Also, very heartwarming story. One that is close to my heart for sure from being raised on it, but also just like being a guy who hates his job and loves his wife.
Wait, so is the cry count 2?
This is the thing. You were spot on, David.
Okay.
The cry count is 3.
Because you cried at the very end.
I cried at the very end of the movie as well.
Attaboy Clarence.
What
Angel
really started that cry, I almost counted it as 2 cries because I sort of started crying when Violet comes in and gives him money. And says, I'm not going to go, Georgie. I changed my mind. And gives the money that he had loaned to her back. And he just looks at her in awe and is like, Violet, right? Then I started crying because that was just the moment in the people giving him money scene that moved me the most. And then I kept crying through to the very end. I almost counted it as a 4th cry because I definitely started crying harder when he said attaboy Clarence and the credits started rolling. But I think it was all the same cry. So I think you were spot on. I think 3 was it.
Have I ever been spot on?
I think this is the first time.
We'd have to look, but I think it might be right.
I do believe this is the first time you've nailed the cry count.
Okay.
Hell yeah.
Yay.
Great job. But yeah, it's a movie that I love. It's a movie that I grew up with. It's a movie that even kind of watching for the show, I was like, this is still really hitting for me. And despite it being maybe a little bit overlong, I think it's the greatest movie ever made. It has been and will continue to be a holiday classic for me.
Cool.
Yeah.
Glad you enjoyed it.
Yeah, I'm glad you finally saw it, and I hope you enjoy it more.
Yeah,
on subsequent watches.
I'm looking forward to returning to it at some point in my life.
Nice.
Because that's the beautiful thing about movies is that they grow with us, and we can have different opinions about them throughout our lives, and they can speak to us in different ways.
That's right.
Goddamn, I love the movies. What's next week? I was gonna ask you, but I'm gonna tell them. Fuck you.
Fuck me.
Speaking of the movies, Christmas might be wrapping up by the time this episode comes out.
Yeah.
It'll be our last episode before Christmas. But there is a Christmas present. One last Christmas present that we have in store for you.
Yeah,
courtesy of my favorite director of the past decade, Robert Eggers.
Yes.
Who has a film coming out on Christmas, his remake of Nosferatu.
Yes.
And to celebrate it, we are talking about not a Christmas film per se, but a similarly wintry, cold, icy themed film, The Northman.
Yes. The Northman. So we're gonna, talk about Willem Dafoe farting and shit.
The Viking epic that came out a couple years ago and didn't do very well at the box office.
Yes.
And that broke my little heart.
That you and I have both seen.
Yes.
And it'll be fun to go back to it. It's only going to be my second time with the Northmen. So excited to dive back into my least seen Robert Eggers film.
I think it's my least seen Robert Eggers film as well. Also, probably our newest film that we've talked about,
Other
aside
than, like,
from
new
Dune,
releases. Yeah,
Dune
yeah.
2. And did it come out the same year as Dune 1? I don't know.
But yeah, a newer one.
Yeah.
Yep, we're swinging the pendulum where we had our oldest movie this week, and then we're going to be doing some new shit.
Yeah.
Newer shit.
So join us for all of the Viking fun times.
Yes.
On the 27th, 2 days after Christmas, with the Northmen. Hey.
What if a man was from the north?
In the meantime, we hope you guys have a great holiday season.
Yes.
And
happy holidays, Merry Christmas,
Happy Hanukkah,
whatever you celebrate.
Yeah. Hope that everything with your families and your friends goes well.
Yep.
And even if not, there are people that love you, including us.
That's right.
If your family isn't there for you, we will be there for you.
Yes. And don't jump off a bridge.
Yeah. Don't. Holidays can be a stressful time. Just remember to lean on each other and show your fellow human beings kindness and gentleness in this time.
Yeah. Bring a little bit of that George Bailey light to the world.
Yeah.
All right.
And we'll see you next week with the Northmen. Until then, we love you so much, and as always, Merry Christmas, dipshits!
Dipshits!
Oh boy!
We hope you enjoyed this episode of The Greatest Movie Ever Made. Please remember to leave us a rating and a review, and to subscribe to the show wherever you listen. We appreciate you supporting the show and spreading the word. Tell your friends to listen, tell your enemies to listen, tell your mom to listen. If your neighbor has an unsecured Bluetooth speaker, connect to it and play an episode. You can follow us on social media at TGMEM_podcast. And if you've got a movie that you want us to talk about, send us an email at thegreatestmoviepodcast@gmail.com.